Hello YouTube, this is Hunter Surge of the Brawler Cafe. Today we are finally going to dive into the ability cards, talk about what the good stuff is that you should be putting in your decks. The good stuff that each faction brings to the table is with its ability cards, which are of course the actions, flips, most of those are going to be mad, and hero cards. For the Evo cards, I've already talked about all of those in my videos going over the Bakugan. So go check those out if that's what you're interested in. With that said, before we get into things, just like with the stat averages that we went over before at the beginning of each Bakugan video, we need to talk about a baseline thing that you need to understand about action cards and costing. So basically, what you'll notice when you look at a lot of cards is that the standard expected value you can get out of a card is for each 1 energy a card costs, you should be getting 2 points in B power or damage. So like 200 B power or 2 damage, or 100 B power 1 damage. So with that out of the way, we are going to get into things. We are going to be going through each category of card, starting with the highest rarity stuff and trickling down. So first up, we have the singular awesome rare of the Aquos action cards, which is Absorb. Absorb is really incredible. So at 4 cost, which is about the limit I'd put, like a bit over the limit to be honest, but we can get to this point, and Absorb is such a blowout card that it's worth it. So as you can see, it negates an action card, and then you copy its effect and make your own selections with it. So this is an absolute blowout card. Like, especially at this stage of the game, if you negate one of your opponent's higher costed cards like a Wave Slash or an Inferno Wings, or God forbid a Wax, best of luck to them. Absorber is just in general really fantastic. But it's not something that you're going to want 3 of. This is something that when I include it in my list, I typically 2 of it, because I don't want to get flooded with it, especially early in the game. And its ability to help you win the game is, in the end, completely reliant on your opponent playing an action card. So with that said, let us move on to the super rares. First up, we have Aquos Slam. This one is, so the super rare actions for Aquos are not very good. The first one we have is Aquos Slam. So it gives +5 damage and draw 3 cards. Now, cards that only increase your damage rating are typically not fantastic. You want them to be doing other things. Like if they're just a bonus that you're getting when you're playing the card for some other effect, like say Cloak and Shadow and Darkest. That's a good example that we'll be talking about in the next video. But if like it's not something that you really want. So like the main feature, basically the reason is because you need to be gaining B power to actually win battles, and damage is only useful when you've already won. And yes, you can stand in your opponent. It's possible for you to open in your opponent not on a turn. However, this is not something that you should be relying on, and definitely not something you should be building your decks around. There are of course cards in Pirates that will make the victor condition be determined by damage, but you shouldn't really be running a whole lot of damage boosting cards to support those, and the ones that you do should be very low costed. So this really does not fit any of those categories. Generally, my opinion is that you should be aiming for action cards that are 3 or less, and any above that should be really powerful cards. Aquos Slam does not fit that criteria. You're basically paying 5 to draw 3, when you could do the same with, say, Aquos Hyper Fangsaur, and also be getting a +400 to B and +2 damage out of it for a lower cost. There's also Strata, which will give you similar amounts of cards over the course of the game for only 2 energy. Think Again can give you, or Second Thoughts can give you a draw 2 for 2 energy or 3 energy. There's just a lot of better ways to get draw power, especially within Aquos. The other one is Mind Flood. Mind Flood is another like very damage focused card. It's 2 energy to give +2 damage, and +2 damage for every other card you play this turn. Nothing fantastic. It's not something that I would really recommend running. Because again, it's just a damage boosting card, and we don't really need something like this. Like, Like this is just not the sort of card that you really want to be running. It's like something that you want to do as like a combo ender. When I could be running like stuff like Masato Kazami, which we'll get into later, and Everett Reita as a combo ender there instead. Like, just not something that I'd recommend. So that is all the SRs and ARs. Now we are moving on to the rares. So first up we have BubbleNet. BubbleNet is a card I'm a really big fan of. So at 2 costs, it's plus 300B, so slightly below what you would typically get for 2 cost. However, you retract your Bakugan at the end of the turn. This is extremely good in decks that are revolving around a specific boss evolution. Because it allows you to reuse your extremely powerful Bakugan in the next battle, if you win with it. So this pairs well with things like Chaos Titan Nilius, though it's not really recommended to run Aquos with that right now. Pyrus Titan Dragonoid, Pyrus Hyper Serpentise Ultra, and Chaos Fangzor are all ones that come to mind immediately. Chaos Fangzor, though, you should be a bit careful with, because, of course, if you retract, you're going to be losing the core, so might risk domination there. But if you have domination at that point, you'll keep it into the next round, so whatever. And this can also be helpful in the early game if your deck is, say, like, again, with those big boss monster decks, since typically the base forms of those Bakugan are pretty weak, like, in all those cases, like, they're like 300 or less base B power. You're typically going to want to be carrying some like 700 or higher base B power Bakugan to help shore up that weakness. And BubbleNet will allow you to reuse that Bakugan in the earlier stages of the game, so that you can get yourself to the point in the game where you can get those Evos out and those Bakugan can stop being dead weight. So yeah, overall, very, very good card. I like it a lot. Deep Illusion. This is a 3 cost that negates a hero card. So this has a few applications. Like if you're playing mono Aquos, or in general if you're running Aquos in a deck that isn't running Ventus or Chaos, or even Pyrus. No, Ventus or Darkus, sorry, I mean. Ventus, Darkus, or even Pyrus, so you might still run this over Cinder Coil. But basically this gives you an out stuff like Dan and Winton and Strata, and anything you might not want your opponent getting on the board, or Everett. And in addition, if your opponent is playing like a long game deck that runs Magnus to guarantee a victory, and get big damage in, this is the only thing in the game that's going to stop Magnus from applying that plus 5,000 B power boost. So it's very good in that way too. But that's a very niche application. You'd mainly use it if you're a deck without access to the hero removers and you want an out to heroes, especially mono Aquos. Mono Aquos is the big one that comes to mind for me. Flooding Waters. This is the thing that makes mono Aquos a deck. So it's 1 energy for plus 200B for each Aquos Bakugan on your team. So when you're running mono Aquos, this means this has 1 cost for plus 600B. 3 times the value you typically get. The most powerful 1 cost in the game, even beating out the powerful Nature's Power. So yeah, this is just an amazing card. This is the reason you run mono Aquos. As I said, this is the reason you play mono Aquos, because it gives you access to this incredibly powerful card that is going to remain relevant into the late stages of the game. Hurricane Slash. This is not so great. 3 cost for plus 200B, so extremely far below the value you'd expect. Flow, if you play another card this turn, return this to your hand. It's a 3 cost. We won't be getting better effects than that. We could be getting like draw effects off by then, like with stuff like Think Again. Hell, Aquos has another action card that we're going to talk about in a bit called Aquos Shield, which is plus 200B, and if you use it on an Aquos ability, Aquos Bakugan, you draw a card. It's a lower cost, still gives you a card back. Like this thing is not worth it. Especially since it's not coming online until late in the game. If you want something like this, you'd honestly be better off with Shoryuken, but I wouldn't really run that either. Of course, Shoryuken. Forgot that was next. Shoryuken is 2 cost plus 1 damage, return this to your hand. It does it all the time. It always returns itself to your hand, so it's a flow enabler, it's better. But I wouldn't bother with this either. Especially since Inspire is a card that we will talk about later. Solitude. This is a card that is quite obviously, like, has a lot of potential. It's 3 cost for plus 1000B, as long as you only have 1 open Bakugan. So that means all the Bakugan except for the one that's currently battling have to be closed. This is a card with a lot of potential, but I haven't really found a deck I really want to slot it into, but this is something that I would keep in mind. Right now, I feel that we probably don't have enough retracting stuff to really utilize this, but it is something that I want to keep my eye on. But right now, I feel like most of the time it'd just be 2 dead of the card, and we have another 3 cost for plus 1000 within Aquos anyways. And Whirlpool, 3 cost for plus 3 damage. Flow if you play another card this turn, plus 3 Frost Strike. 3 cost for 2 bad stats. Not exactly what we want to be seeing. So that's going to be a pass. Alright, next we are moving into the commons. So, card I mentioned earlier, Aquos Shield. This is something that I did experiment with early on in Mono Aquos, but it's something that I feel I'm going to end up taking out, probably for a fixation, which we'll be talking about in a moment, or Bubble Net, stuff like that. Not something that I'm terribly big fan of. Like, the B power boost is just too low, especially when in Aquos you have so many better draw options. Like, stuff like Strata is just really, really good. Fangs, or like, those are all the draw power you really need to be having in a deck. Cycling Thoughts. This is another draw card. It's 3 cost, draw 2 cards, and return this card to the bottom of the deck. It's typically taking up too much, and when you have an option like Strata, that's typically going to be the better route. I've been talking about Strata a lot, but we'll get to it eventually, guys. It's a hero. Ebb is just a 2 cost damage boosting card. It's really bad for its cost when you play it normally, 2 cost for 2 damage. But slightly above average when you play it under flow. But the thing is, if you were going to run a 2 cost damage boosting card, like, I would always run Mind Flood, because it's only one worse than this when played with 1 card played before it. But with any more cards played, like with 2 or more cards played, like any 2 or any more amount of cards than 2, you will always be getting better value than you would out of Ebb, so I just don't really care for Ebb at all. Fixation, card I just talked about. This is another card that can retract your Bakugan. So basically, it retracts a Bakugan that did not open this turn. So there's a lot of confusion about the rulings around this card. People were misinterpreting what that text means. Basically, it just means you choose a Bakugan on either player's team that opened on a previous turn and is still open. So this is a multifaceted, like, you lose the plus 3 on B that you would get from Bubble Nut, but this is a bit multifaceted in that it allows you to close a Bakugan that like, you can draw into this and then close a Bakugan. Unfortunately, you select what Bakugan you use before you have a play timing to play any cards during the turn, so you can't draw into Fixation. Oh, play it down immediately, close up a Bakugan, and use that Bakugan that turn. Unfortunately, you cannot do that. But yeah, you can also use it to close up one of your opponent's Bakugan when they're about to get off a team attack. And this can be really good, especially against double strike strategies, because what you can do is, okay, your opponent's rolling a double strike against their third. Say it's Pirate's Fangs or in a fist deck. So they have these 2 Pegatrixes on the back row. And if they get this win with Fangor, they're going to be dealing 32 damage with this team attack. Okay, you can't beat them, but you fixation them. You fixation to close one of the Pegatrixes in the back. So now Fangor wins, goes and closes, and now they have to win with one of their Pegatrixes to get it off. And they're not going to get the double strike. This is also really good in decks that have some low B power Bakugan, especially like the ones that will turn into boss cards later, especially when you know they're not going to be at that point yet. So like, say your opponent has a Drago, they're about to do a team attack with a third Bakugan, which is something strong, like a Hydra, Darkest Hydra's Ultra or something. Alright, you fixation, force them to close Drago. Now they have to roll out Drago, and Drago is really easy for you to beat. Fantastic. Drago probably isn't the best example, because once it evolves, it's going to have double strike. But it gives you the general sense of what I mean by that. And you can also use it to turn off your opponent's domination by retracting the Bakugan and forcing them to return that core. Lots of cool applications of fixation due to its ability to retract your opponent's Bakugan. Greater Water Boost is amazing, just because it's a 0 cost. It's nice that it's a B power boost instead of a damage boost. This is really fantastic for just getting your flow abilities online. Like, this lets you do some good flow plays on turn 1, This allows Wave Slash, which we'll be talking about in a bit. Get off on turn 3. And yeah, and in Fury decks, this is great because it's a 0 cost, so it's very easy to empty out of your hand. It's also great with Strata because it gives you free cards to play to get Strata out early. So yeah, great applications with this card. Lots of good stuff. Hydroblast. This is... this card is... Oh boy. So this is 6 cost for +4 damage and +4 Frost Strike. Okay, I'll be honest with you. I was formulating my points about this card, but I forgot that this was 6 cost. I thought this was 4 cost. Okay, so real talk. Even if you wanted a damage boosting and Frost Strike card, why would you ever run this card when Whirlpool exists? For half the cost, you're only sacrificing 1 damage and 1 Frost Strike. Like, why would you ever touch this card? There's no reason. But it's a common, so like, I'm not mad about that or anything. It's just like, I do remember seeing some people on Regin's channel running this card. I'm like, Whirlpool exists. Run Whirlpool. If you really want that sort of effect, just run Whirlpool. Ice Barrier, this is a standard card that we're going to be seeing in a lot of factions. In fact, 4 out of the 5 factions have literally this exact card. This is 2 cost for +400. Aquos has a lot of great B power boosting cards. They don't really have all that much of note at the 2 cost stuff. Like, their good 2 cost stuff is like Fixation and Bubble Nut. So if you wanted some better B power boosting like this, you would potentially run an Ice Barrier. But if you have like Chaos, or Pirates on your team, they're just going to be better options for you to run in this 2 cost slot. So yeah, even in Mono Aquos, I don't even fit this card in because like I have Flooding Waters. I have Flooding Waters and Tide, so I have better turn 2 plays anyways. Like within Aquos, like on your turn 2, you can start doing things like, okay, 1 cost plus 1 cost for my plays. I'm not gonna specify what plays, but the plays. All right. More comments. Isolation. This is basically Solitude, but for damage. So it's just worse. It's also worse and also that it gives you less value. You're only getting 8 damage while Solitude gave you 1000 B. Like, just worse in every conceivable way. There's a reason this is a common and Solitude is rare. Icicle. 3 cost plus 6 damage. It's just a damage boosting card. Not great. If you really want something like that, Masato and Mind Flood are way, way better. Ice Wall, this is actually a bit above curve, but it's a 4 cost, so like I could be playing Absorb and like actual blowout cards that are worth that high cost, or you know, Wave Slash. We'll get to that. It's like the last action card. Inspire. So this is something that I'd only really touch in like budget decks and Mono Aquos. This is something that I go back and forth on. Like I'd replace an Instant with a better 1 cost if we had them in Mono Aquos, but like it is kind of nice to have like a 1 cost that you can just drop to get flow stuff going on turn 2, and you get a card back. Like, it's not bad, it's not awful, but it's really just deck filler right now. That's the only reason I even touch it. Liquid Strike is 2 cost for +3 Frost Strike. Frost Strike is like even more relevant than it usually is in the early stages of the game, so I don't understand why you'd even touch this. Like, I don't really see why you touch this card. Like, maybe on a 1 cost one, because then you can just go, hey, hey, with my, like, 1 extra energy, hey, this just drops a Frost Strike. On a 2 cost, it's like, not big enough difference. Like, if I want Frost Strike, I'd go for Whirlpool. Think again. This is a 2 cost, draw a card, and if you play another card this turn, draw 2 cards instead. Nice, decent draw card, but, like, stuff like Strata and Hyper Fangs or Exist and are a lot better. But when your deck is in the early stages and not quite complete, or you feel that you really need some extra draw power, and none of the other factions you're running can give it to you, then hey, this is fine. And Tidal Wave, this is a 4 cost, plus 7 damage. This is obviously below curve, so like even beyond just being a damage boosting card, bad, very bad, do not run. Alright, the last 4 comments. First we have Tides at 1 cost. This is a really fantastic card. 1 cost for the standard plus 200B, but if you play another card this turn, it's plus 400B instead. Obviously, very incredible card. This is what Greater Water Boost enables you to do on turn 1 that I was talking about earlier. Just fantastic card, absolute staple. 3 of Aquos card. Like, this is something that you're always going to be carrying. Triple Blast Cannon is just a 3-cost version of Absorb that does not copy the action. Considering there's only a 1-cost difference between them, I don't typically bother with Triple Blast Cannon. In decks, I'm just have Aquos in, but in Mono Aquos, I do run this card at like 2 or 3. I think 3. Yeah, I run 3 of this in Mono Aquos. Simply because I have the space. But outside of Mono Aquos, I wouldn't really bother with this unless you don't have your Absorbs. Because this is only a common and Absorb is a awesome rare. So, like, obviously much easier to get this. Water Slash is 1 cost for +2 damage. It is a 1 cost to help enable flow things, but like, at that point, I would rather be running Inspire. Because if I'm going to be having to be running a damage boosting card of 1 cost, like that's for enabling flow stuff, I'd rather it be something that draws me back a card. And lastly, we have Wave Slash, the card I've been talking up for so much. So, when you play it normally for 3 costs, it's only +300B, which is like very, very bad, very below curve. However, under flow, it's +1000B. So, this card will typically win you most rounds that you play it in. It's extremely powerful. Very, very good action card. One of the best Aquos has to offer. Like, super, super good. Sometimes when you're putting Aquos in a deck, you don't have a whole lot of flow enabling and you're running it more for draw power and stuff. And there you won't run Wave Slash. This is especially true, potentially true within Aquos builds that are running like Titan Drago or Dan Kuzo. Well, you have to run Dan Kuzo to run Titan Drago, basically. But regardless, that's not the point. The point is that you might not run it there because, like, you'd have to spend a card before... You'd have to be playing a card before you roll to be able to get this off the Dan. So, like, it's not fantastic in that department. But otherwise, it's really, really good. Alright, now we're going to move into the heroes. Starting off with our Bakugan Elite hero card, we have Toshi. So this 9 cost instantly makes this something that we really don't want to touch. It's just not great. It's not really something you want. Now, when you play it, you search your deck for an action card and reveal it, then put it into your hand, shuffle your deck, and copy the first action card you play each turn. So this is a potentially very powerful effect. Not particularly within Aquos specifically, because Aquos doesn't particularly synergize with this effect terribly well. But it can be obviously played with other factions and you can abuse stuff there. But like, it's just too expensive. 9 costs is a completely just not a realistic cost at all, especially when it doesn't really do anything the turn it's played. Like, you're spending 9 to search an action that you're not going to have the energy to play, so that you can copy the first action card you play on the following turns. But 9 costs, like, it's too much. It's just way too much for this to be doing something in a reliable amount of games. Like, yes, there will be games where utilizing Winton, you'll be able to get to that 9 energy and to the turn after that. But in the majority of games, that isn't going to happen. So it's not something reliable, and it just ruins the card overall. Shun Kazami is a card that I've seen a lot of people talking up, and I think it is a mistake to do so. Aquos has some really, really good heroes, but Shun Kazami is not one of them. So Shun Kazami is 2 costs. Evos cost you 1 energy less to play. Now, my issue with Shun Kazami is very simple. Well, it's twofold. 1, Shun Kazami will not be getting you that much value over the course of the game. I have found in a lot of games you will only end up getting out 1 or 2 Evos. So, like, and you need to be playing all three of your Evos, which honestly does not happen all that like, it happens often enough, especially in longer games. But it's not something that's going to happen like every game, and that's what you need to be doing with Shun Kazami to really get the value that you want out of him for having to spend a turn putting him down. So, like, say you put him down turn 2 so that you can drop Hyper Fangs or turn 3. Okay, you just sacrifice your turn, and you know what could have done that better? something like, say, Ventus's turn to energy. The only place I would ever touch Shin Kazami is if you're playing like a deck that's really focused on rushing out Titan Drago. Like I've been working on a build using Trox Ultra that would go Pyrus, Aquos, Ventus, and it would run Turn to Energy, Song of Fire, Shin Kazami, and of course Trox Ultra itself. So it would have all these ways of ramping to help you get stuff like Titan Drago and Hyper Fang Zora and stuff like that out early. But just on its own, Shin Kazami is not fantastic, and it's just doing a worse version of Turn to Energy. And it can get removed. It's a hero card, so it can get removed. It's not great. I cannot really recommend this, and I think people are throwing it into decks way too willy-nilly. So next up we have our super rare heroes, which we have quite a bit of. So first up we have B at 1 cost. 1 cost hero is very nice to see for like hero-centric decks. But the effect that you get out of it is not terribly great. When you select a Bakugan to roll, you may turn a Bakugan on the field face up. It's very difficult to hit open on a very precise Bakugan. And like all this is good for is like revealing your opponent's information. Information that's going to get revealed, and especially like assuming tournaments are best of 3, which they had better be best of 3. Assuming that, then this is going to have extremely low value in games 2 and 3. Because, well, you'll already have the information it's trying to give you. Like, of course, repeat, multiple of the same type of core exists, but, like, it's not hard to figure this stuff out, and you can just avoid the stuff that you know can potentially be a trap until you know for sure. And there's no sideboard, so you wouldn't be able to side it out, so, like, nah, I would not recommend this. Not worth it. There's a better 1 cost, trust me. So next we have Everett Ray. Everett Ray, right? Everett Ray is super good. Like, one of the best heroes in the game. So, very simple card. Your Bakugan have plus 200B, and its cost is decreased by 2 energy for each card you have played this turn. So this is, if you've played 3 cards the turn that you go to play this, it costs nothing. Zilch. And that ability, that plus 200B to all of your Bakugan, is super, super good. Like, it's just so good to have this permanent buff on all of your Bakugan, making it easier for them to win the game. And the fact that you can get this into play for free is just amazing. Even at 2 costs, that's not too bad. Like, it's fantastic, and this is one of the great things about Greater Water Boost. It's also really fantastic for Fury decks because it allows you, because you're going to be running a lot of low-cost cards in Fury anyways to empty your hand. So that'll get Everett Ray down to a low cost, and then you can drop Everett Ray, and oh, now one of the cards I was ditching from my hands to get myself into Fury to turn Hyper Serpentine Ultra on 9 is also giving all of my things a permanent buff. It's a really big deal. Honestly, in any Aquos deck where I'm carrying Everett Ray and I'm also carrying Darkest Hydra's Ultra, I just won't touch Darkest Hydra's Ultra's Evo. Like, this is the very few cases where I just won't run an Evo of a Bakugan, because especially when I'm running Everett Ray, it's like, I'm only getting plus 200B for 3 energy out of Darkest Hydra's Ultra's Evo. But if I get Everett Ray down, I'm getting that same buff. So why don't I just do that and save some space? That's my line of thinking when it comes to that. Moving on though. Maggie, a very bad card because Frost Strike 5 cost is too much. Only your Aquos Bakugan get the plus 2 Frost Strike as well. It's just not great. Yeah, it's just to make it clear why Frost Strike isn't great. So Frost Strike increases the cost of your opponent's flip cards. So the only really competitively viable flip cards are the ones that make themselves free, and because they make themselves free, Frost Strike doesn't do anything to them. So it's just not something that you really want to be carrying. Cards that do explicitly that. And Strata, I've talked this thing up a lot. Strata for 2 cost, all players draw an additional card each turn. This is so good. So yes, you are giving your opponent additional cards too. But you are Aquos, you're an Aquos deck, which means you're getting better value out of playing multiple cards. And it's just like, while you may be giving your opponent additional cards, like, you're both still operating off of the same energy limit. And it's very important to be able to get the things that you need and it's worth taking that risk when it's such a reliable draw card. Like, get this down on turn 2, and it's probably going, in most games, it's going to end up giving you an additional 4 or 5 cards. And that is huge, absolutely huge for getting you the things you need, getting you the plays that you need. Is just fantastic. And especially when, of course, you are Aquos, which means you have access to stuff like Absorb. So if you're giving your opponent big plays, you can take advantage of that with stuff like Absorb. So, like, it's just overall really fantastic. Amazing hero. Like, the heroes I tend to fit into every deck, try to fit into every Aquos deck I play, are this and Everett Ray, because they are so good in basically every deck. Especially, like, again, back on Fury, especially with Fury, because, okay, drop this down for 2 cost, and now once I'm down to Fury, it is a lot easier for me to operate at that Fury level, because now I am not operating off of a single top deck each turn. I'm operating off of 2 top decks, which is a lot easier to do. It's just all around just really fantastic card. Love it so much. And nasty, let's make it real big. Misato Kazami. This is the 1-cost hero that I would be running. I only really run this in my hero deck, mainly because it's a 1-cost hero that does like a more beneficial effect than the other 1-cost heroes do. So basically, if you play 2 or more cards this turn, your next attack this turn has +2 damage. It's just a damage booster, but it's probably it is the best damage booster hero, and all around I'd say best damage booster, because it's 1 cost for +2 damage, but you can continually get that across multiple turns as long as you're playing the game. So, like, just great card. Like it a lot. Only running that hero deck, but whatever. You can ignore that fact. And last up, we have the flip cards. Now, we're going to breeze through this real quick, because I already did a video explaining my points on why flips are not terribly great. So we're mainly going to talk about what applications these have, if any. So Brain Geyser, this got completely, like, any value this potentially had got completely ruined by the hand size limit of 7. So basically, if you draw your hand up to more than 7, then at the end of the turn you have to ditch a bunch of stuff. Not fantastic, not great. It's also 4 cost, and it doesn't actually stop the damage, because you still end up drawing the rest of the damage that you will have taken. It only saves you from any damage when that hit would have killed you otherwise. So it's really not fantastic. Fading Dash is actually the one utility flip that I'm kind of okay on. Would maybe consider, because it's 1 cost, and it's 1 cost to retract a Bakugan that didn't open this turn to draw 2 cards, which is kind of a... I like that effect a lot. So, like, it's a card that didn't come from your hand. You retract a Bakugan, which is a good effect to have. That's not a cost. That's a good effect that you want to have. And then you draw 2 cards. So, like, that's a pretty good value. Like, it's such high value and such high cost that this is the one utility flip that I would consider running, but I won't run it. I haven't run it in anything yet, but it is the one that I would consider, as I believe I mentioned in the flip video. Because the other already is just 1 cost to draw a card, and who needs that? Fading Dash exists. Go away, go away. We have Inspire and stuff. Counter Outsiders. Okay, so, like, I'm going to talk about Counter Outsiders for just a second, even though it's just the same thing as always. But in Aquos, because Aquos does not have a proper keyword flip, but Mono Aquos is a deck very worthwhile running. So, I would, in only Mono Aquos, I would actually carry 3 Counter Outsiders, just because you do need a couple flips, just to keep yourself from dying from, like, big aggro decks, which are basically just 6 shields, 6 fists, or fury, because those decks are able to dish out huge amounts of damage. So it is useful to have, like, just a couple flips there to keep you from biting it to those decks super quickly. But outside of that, as always, don't touch the Outsiders cards. And even more so applies to the stop specific factions cards, to the point where I'm not even going to go over them. If you must know, the ones for Aquos counter Aquos, Chaos, and Pyrus, and of course, Aggression is for Chaos and Pyrus. So yeah. Yeah, that's it for Aquos. With that said, I'll be seeing you guys next time with the Darkest video. There might be a deck profile coming out between now and the Darkest video, so look forward to that. I'm thinking of doing Mono Aquos, And with that said, this is Hunter Surge, signing off.